Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai, Huan and welcome to the first CALT Kōrero, a monthly series of talks about teaching innovation here at Te Whare Wānanga o Tākau. We're going to begin today with a message from our Deputy Vice-Chancellor, Academic, Professor Helen Nicholson.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Helen Nicholson, tōku ingoa. Kia ora koutou, my name's Helen Nicholson, I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor Academic. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this first CALT Kōrero. Teaching and learning is a vital part of what we do as a university. And these kōrero are a way of raising the profile of teaching and learning, providing an opportunity to share the expertise of our amazing staff, and providing a forum for people to come together and discuss some of the challenging issues that we face. Today we're going to talk about open resources, but in future CALT Kōrero we will be talking about other challenges such as AI and ChatGPT and why students don't come to lectures. I'd like to thank the Committee for the Advancement of Learning and Teaching for this innovation, and particularly for Russell Butson, Sarah Stein and Kate Bardwell for the work they've put into making this happen. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Kia ora, Helen. Thank you very much. I'd like to start today by welcoming everybody to this kōrero. Firstly to our studio audience who are here in the media production studio, to those of you watching online via Zoom, and also to those of you who might be catching up with us at a later date via the CALT Kōrero website. One of the big concepts behind CALT Kōrero is to foster conversation and a debate about the way we teach at Otago, and it's not just about whether you can be here in person or whether you're watching live, but also potentially engaging with the conversations at a later date through the website. Okay, so the format for today is, well, it's a conversation, it's a kōrero. I have a wonderful panel here of teaching practitioners here at the university with me. So we'll be having a chat. I'll be asking them some questions, but I also welcome questions from the audience. Towards the end, I'll ask if people here in the studio with us have questions, and they can ask them on the mic, but also people who are watching from Zoom live can feed questions through the Zoom chat, and they will magically appear for me here on this tablet in the studio, and I'll put them to the panel. So, to introduce myself, ko Richard White aho, ko hau te kaiwhakahaere manatarua me te whakawāteataka. I am the Manager, Copyright and Open Access here at the university. My role, broadly speaking, is trying to ensure that we are copyright compliant, but also to advise staff about things to do with open access, understanding licensing, understanding your rights as creators, and also what you can and can't do with things that are created by other people. In the context of today's discussion about open educational resources, obviously licensing is a big part of it, understanding when something's open, what does that really mean? What can you do with it? Are you allowed to copy it? Can you change it? Can you make money off it? Those kind of things. But on the copyright side of resources and readings and access, people will be asking me questions about, well, I can copy how much of this book, or what are the license terms of this ebook, you know, and why can't my students download those things? Those sorts of questions. And I work very closely with the library on a lot of those access questions as well. So that's me. Turning to my panel here, I'm going to ask each of them to briefly introduce themselves. I guess, you know, your name, what department you're from, and what's the kind of scope of your teaching or the focus of your research. So, Lennys, over to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Lennys tōku ingoa, and I'm from the Department of Management in the Otago Business School. And I guess I have a background in open resources for about 10 years or so now, which is really exciting to bring it here. And I teach in the HR program and the management program, so I'm teaching leadership and change and employment relations. Kia ora.
Cool. Sure, thank you. Sophie.
Tēnā koutou, ko Sophie tōku ingoa. I am a teaching fellow in the Department of Geology, and I'm teaching mostly into first year geology courses.
Cool, thank you very much. And joining us from Auckland, sunny apparently Auckland, on Zoom is Christine. Yep, Christine.
大家好，你好，I am Christine, and I'm Christine Yip. I'm teaching the Otago MBA program. The scope is professional consulting engagement, so that's largely about project management.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so before we get into questions for the panel, I'm going to provide a little bit of a framework to ensure that everyone's kind of on the same page about what open resources are, at least in the context of what we're doing here. Open educational resources, or OERs, are any kind of educational material that's free, online. They're licensed in a way that enable other people to use, share, and adapt those things. So in other words, they're not just something that's online, they're something that's specifically enabled for people to reuse. They can really be any kind of material. Today we'll really be focusing on, for want of a better word, textbooks, although I guess really the kind of textbooks we're talking about are not the traditional kind, but they're likely to be more interactive and incorporate different kinds of media and elements within the overall framework of a textbook. So that's maybe the focus of our chat today, but OERs really can be anything. They can be videos, they can be quizzes, they can be a curriculum that someone has developed and released online for other people to use. Literally anything. Wikipedia is an OER. More or less anything that's open and online and has an educational use and is licensed in that way can be an open resource. It's worth mentioning that OERs are not new. They've been around really since the dawn of the internet, but probably more prominently in the last 10, 12, 15 years in some parts of the world. They haven't really caught on for some reasons that we might get into today in a big way. But I will mention that in some places they've invested quite a lot of time and resource and thinking at a strategic level into developing OERs for the benefit of teaching staff and students. A good example is British Columbia in Canada, where they've been working in the space for 12 years or more. And one nice fact to drop in is that they've estimated that they've saved students $32 million in the 12 years of their project. They calculate that by taking a traditional textbook that cost X dollars that was being used in a course before, and then multiplying that by the number of students, and then each year subsequently that they haven't used the book that cost that amount. They work out the total. So they're estimating $32 million saved for students in British Columbia over that period of time. And one other OER just to mention is a media studies textbook that was developed here at the university in 2014. Was hacked together in a weekend by a bunch of people, not just at Otago actually. There were people from a number of different universities across Australasia who wanted to create a media studies book for first year students that had a local flavour. So they hacked it together in a kind of a coding hack style over a weekend. And in the time that that's been available online, it's been used over 500,000 times by people literally from all over the world. Funnily enough, largely in North America, which was the kind of textbook they were trying to avoid by writing their own local New Zealand favoured one. But for some reason, it was very popular in North America. So the OERs have been around for a while. The benefits are pretty clear, I suppose, if you think about them. Obviously, they're free. They don't cost students any money. We used to expect students to, certainly when I was a student, there was an expectation that you would buy the textbooks. And if you didn't, then they would be available for you in the library. High demand ones would be on reserve. It's probably fair to say we don't really expect students to buy textbooks, or at least we know a fair proportion of them will not buy a book, even if we tell them it's really necessary for the course, and they'll find other means to get the information that they need. So free cost is obviously one significant benefit. It's also free in terms of barriers. You know, there's no logins. You don't have to have an account. You don't have to go through Blackboard or Moodle or a portal to reach a thing that you want to just read if you're reading for that course. So there's equity diversity and inclusion are kind of key things at the heart of OERs. They're baked in. They're also free of time constraints as well. Obviously, one of the things we've turned to a lot in recent times is ebooks, which are great as a way of providing access anywhere, anytime for our students. But there are still restrictions to those. One is cost, not necessarily free. Not everything is available in an ebook. And there's also the time constraint of you must actually be enrolled as a student in order to access those kind of ebooks. Whereas with OERs, high school students can see the textbook before they come to university. High school teachers can even use them to help, shape, year 13 courses as a way of teaching students what they're going to learn at university. And obviously in terms of lifelong learning, there's no constraint at the end of the courses as well, that once you lose access, you don't have access to your book. So that's a clear benefit as well. And I've mentioned a couple of times already that a key reason people get into OERs is to localize them, and you guys will have some things to say about those too. It's not an Australian textbook, and it's not a Canadian textbook or a European textbook. You can, because of the license, you can take the thing, you can adapt it and change it to fit your own local context. This is not to say that OERs are not without their challenges. We were chatting a little bit before we came online today about the fact that OERs are not kind of plugged into the traditional systems for production, publication, editorial standards, peer review, all that kind of thing, are not really part of OERs. They tend to be developed by people with a passion who invest their own time and effort into it, which raises some concerns about sustainability of an open textbook as well. It hasn't got the publisher coming back to the authors every 3 years and saying, we need to update this, and we're going to pay you some kind of stipend to do it. So sustainability is another potential issue with OERs. Not to mention just the time and effort that's involved in creating them, as these guys are doing now. Okay, so that brings me to my final bit to wrap up my introductory part of the talk today. And that's to say that we are, and the three people here on the panel today are involved in this project, which has been undertaken at the university to dip our toes, I guess, into the open educational resources space and create some of our own textbooks. So CALT, which is the Council of Australian University Librarians, of which there's a New Zealand part, have bought a license to Pressbooks, which is an open textbook platform, which is essentially WordPress, but modified for educational use. And we can host a number of books on this platform. It's a way of authoring, but then also publishing and making available your OERs through Pressbooks. So that's what we've signed up for. We have a couple of slots each year that people can, if they're interested, sign up for. But also it comes with support in terms of a community of practice where you can talk to other authors, you can get training on how to use the software and that sort of thing, but also support locally from people like me. And there's also grants available through that program too. Okay, that's my blurb to begin today's chat about open educational resources. So I'm going to turn to my panel now. Let's start today. Lennys, I'll start with you, and we'll work that way. So perhaps you could just give everyone here, what's the project you're undertaking? What's the scope of it? What are your plans? Where are you at right now?
Okay, fantastic. I'm producing a book, a textbook on workplace health and safety and employment relations. And it's giving me an opportunity to, I guess, draw some resources that I'd been creating in other universities prior and weave them into my current context here in Otago. So at the moment, I have some content written, and then I'm drawing in some new content. And I'm at the stage where I'm really grappling with the actual software, and I've really enjoyed being part of the community of practice probably since mid last year, and just really connecting with people, I guess, who are like-minded around the philosophy of open education resources, and just stretching us to think about universal design and a whole bunch of other things. So that's kind of the space I'm in at the moment.
Interesting. Thank you. And the things that you developed beforehand, some of these were videos, I understand.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I'd
There's a
worked,
bunch of different kinds of media, or
it's drawing together a bunch of media, and it was nice that you spoke to the textbook being much more a multimedia resource perhaps than a traditional textbook. So I'd produced 6 animated videos with a team of media producers prior, and they're ISBN resources, so they get to be plugged into my new open textbook.
So in a way, you're kind of curating stuff and drawing together existing material.
It's really nice. It's being able to share with my Otago learners a portfolio of work. And it's also nice for me because it's a reflection on the journey where I've been in workplace health and safety and employment relations, and where that field has come from and going to. So.
And importantly, you retained the rights to the things that you made in previous jobs so that you were able to just...
Correct, yeah. And even still, though, it was really important to be courteous and go back to that institution and make sure that they could understand. And importantly, the opportunity to share back is really important, because I know that they are still teaching off my resources today. So I'm able to share that back in a new way and integrate more resources in for everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, Sophie, so how about your project?
Yeah, so our group is working on writing an introductory geology textbook. So I'm working with 2 colleagues on this, Mike Palin from Geology here at Otago and Kate Pedley from the School of Earth and Environment at Canterbury. This is a textbook for first year courses, but because we want it to be applicable to multiple universities, which have pretty different course structures and themes at the first year level, one of our goals is to try and make it as flexible as possible rather than prescriptive to a single course. Another one of our goals is to frame this open text in a Aotearoa New Zealand kind of perspective. So geology is a very place-based discipline.
Yeah.
So bringing in local geological examples, case studies, and also Indigenous knowledges as well is really exciting for us.
Cool. Okay. And you had already been working with an OER that was a Canadian textbook previously. Yeah.
So Saskatchewan, based on the British Columbia text. And we have been using that in one of our courses for 2 years now. Yeah.
Okay. So one difference, well, a couple of differences between your 2 projects. You're working by yourself. You've got the benefits and challenges of collaborating with other people, but also you're both using stuff that has come before. In your case, it's your own material, but in your case, it's building upon the work that's been done elsewhere, but localizing it. Yeah. Okay, great. Great, okay, and then over to Christine.
Hi, good morning. So my project is translating one English open textbook on project management. I've lifted a bit and into a bit more of an MBA project management executive teaching material. And the book title is Strategy Consulting, partly because the people who take an MBA are executive level, a guide for executives leading project. I am using the original English open textbook, translating into international Chinese. Now that's probably a new and probably slightly ambitious concept for a lot of people. As you can imagine, if you speak a different language, there are different regional differences. And I had the first taste of it when I taught the first cohort. And it is something that I feel very passionate about. Maybe there is a version like international English that we can put together, knowing that different institutes had multiple different Chinese language version of the jargon of the same thing. So it's a global issue. It's not just what we face as localized issue. And also the fact that I can incorporate a bit of my previous work experience of my first book. And so, yeah, that's something that I feel like that would benefit the wider Chinese speaking community.
It's potentially quite a wide audience. There's quite a few Chinese speakers in the world, aren't there? So your cohort of students, are they all located in China itself, or are they spread across?
The Chinese cohort or in China and different part of the region, and unfortunately, they were in lockdown, so it was a bit of a tricky time to try new things at the time. But then it was good to have the internet and information available online. And that was exactly why I think an open textbook, when the logistical issue is impacting the student, some sort of e-version and online version that's open for them to download can make a huge difference.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. So coming on to our next question, how would you say, Linnea, you touched on this a little bit, how would you say that openness informs the way you teach? I'll come to you first, and then perhaps I'll ask the other two as well. And how does using openness or open resources inform your pedagogical approach to teaching?
Yeah, so I think about it in lots of different levels. I guess I come at it from a perspective of widening participation, first of all, for those who are going to be actually attending my class. So thinking about...
So what's your student body, sort of generally speaking, is quite diverse?
Yeah, so third year students, I'm mainly in the third year student space. I have previously taught undergraduate and postgraduate. And obviously with COVID, we've all experienced online, so that's a really unique setting as well. But I guess I think it's about making the classroom as welcoming as it can be and putting more of an emphasis on the learners learning rather than the teachers teaching, if that makes sense. So really thinking about, do I mind in some cases where a student is able to learn? And I think that if I'm offering an opportunity where for some reason they've had to miss a week and they can engage with the material online, when they come back into the classroom, they're able to pick up and continue as an if. But I guess in the open resource context, it's about the fact that I don't need to worry about the financial situation of my students. And for me personally, I'm always thinking that might be a couple more hours in my classroom if I'm offering that resource for free versus a couple of more hours in the workplace. And so that's a priority there. I guess speaking to Sophie in collaboration, I guess I've done collaborative projects in the past in that space, or at least been thinking about other people in other contexts who would be using these resources, thinking about the longevity of resources. And when you're partnering with developing country contexts, recognising that the colleagues won't always have the same access to even the internal funding resources that I have. So if I can create resources in collaboration with them and then be sharing back in, it's also supporting them, and that can build relationships for life in terms of teaching, research and beyond. So.
Okay. Excellent. Sophie, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of our drivers for considering doing this was just knowing what our students' engagement with the hard copy textbook was. And it's very low. So
yeah, so you had for want of a better word, traditional hard.
Yeah, and new
textbook,
editions coming out were on the order of $250 per copy. So that's getting a little bit extreme for a lot of students. And you know, we know from evaluations and anecdotally that students are more likely to use ebook copies through the university library website of the textbook than to buy the hard copy. But also, you know, up to 65% of the students weren't engaging at all with readings. So for us, it's about OERs actually provide a lot of opportunities to really knit those, you know, readings that it's really multimedia, like you said, Linnea, into the rest of the course. You know, we've got an online learning management system, and OERs work really well with that, and really open up the opportunities for, you know, various styles of flipped learning, flipped classrooms.
And you said you've been using the Canadian OER up till now as well, just elements of it kind of thing, because some of it presumably is not local enough or whatever, But the basic science stuff, I assume, is fairly applicable.
Yeah, and we've had pretty good uptake with that so far. So
okay, good. So that was obviously enough to convince you that this was worth investing the time and effort into going down this road. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. How about you, Christine? You talked a little bit about this already, perhaps, but yeah, sort of that how does openness inform the way you teach or your approach to teaching?
And I think what happened is there's just a lot of information about project management out there that are quite inconsistent. And for executive learning, having one consistent, good quality textbook can make a huge difference to start off with. Then I think that having a textbook rather than you just have so many articles when you do your own research, it just helps with the quality of focus, helping students to focus, and also helping us in terms of quality education to provide an end-to-end story with consistency of material.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. I'd like to dig a little deeper into the concept of I think all three of you have kind of mentioned this in a way, the fact that removing the barriers, whether it's the time ones or the cost ones, expands. You guys are not just thinking about your cohort of students that are coming to this class this year. You're thinking about it more broadly. So I'd like to ask you each maybe to expand on that. Sophie, for example, we've talked about the fact that there's professional discipline as well, government agencies, but school work and that sort of thing as well. So for each of you, the question is kind of, what are those broader avenues that can be explored by going down this path? Sophie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, a New Zealand geology textbook doesn't currently exist. Looking at broader applications, high school, NCA, Earth and Space Science, really.
You said, or it might have been Mike, said geology is not a subject you can do at high school. You do elements of it in geography or
geography or Earth and Space Science is the main one.
So it might have been Mike who used the phrase, it's a discovered subject at university.
That's right.
So in a way, this is a way to help that discovery by removing the.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, a lot of it comes down to cost, but a lot of it is also engagement. So being able to knit in, quizzes and formative assessments into the text, the OER itself, really helps with student engagement. And, we're welcoming them into the discipline and getting them interested. So it's a good way.
And how about the professional side? I don't know much about it, but, there's GNS science and, there's a broader group of people at the other end, if you like. You've talked about the high school students, but when you come out the other end, there's another cohort of people that have an interest in what you're doing potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're starting with a pretty small group just because of logistical challenges of collaborating on such a ambitious task. But the great thing about OERs is that they're editable and you can add to them. So bringing in sort of the professional side of things and giving students a sense of what career opportunities are available in the discipline through this text would be great. It'd be great to have some case studies from folks in the various institutions.
So obviously those people will have complete access to what you've produced as well, and they could potentially contribute to it in future times.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Okay, great. Christine, how about you? Did you have any other thoughts on this kind of? You've mentioned. Obviously, there's a huge potential audience for your book. So, how are you thinking about in terms of who might use such a book? It's not just your class, but it's what's the broader possibilities there?
Yes, I think in the wider context, high school, even primary school, the project management profession as an industry, we're trying to lift the standard. I've been quite involved with the Project Management Institute in New Zealand. And the fact is, if we can do project better, we potentially, keep workplace safer, like health and safety, what Lennys talked about, and also save a lot of budget and wasting time. And in terms of the fact that we are going through a lot of challenges in business and also in the society, it's important to actually start the education early. And by providing a textbook that's open enough, you can take some of the versions, some of the bits for high school students, again, thinking about the future career, not just sitting at the project manager space, but it can potentially lead you to an executive career. And these are something that, for me personally, I have taken that sort of career journey, and the fact that I have done it, I'd like to share that in part of the textbook, and potentially in the wider community space once it's out, and generate some online discussion and online forum that sort of help other people to sort of grow in that career journey.
Right, thank you. You mentioned as well in an earlier conversation that you would look to produce an English version as well as a Chinese one potentially. Is that still in your thinking, or that's a bit further down the track perhaps? Yeah.
I realized translating is not that straightforward. So right now I'm only focusing doing the Chinese version as good as I can, incorporate some of my experience, and that eventually it will possibly be like a different English version. But at this point, I think it's better to focus on one task and one task only.
Interestingly, Pressbooks platform, I think I mentioned, I can't remember, pressbooks.directory is the URL you can go to browse OERs that have been made available on the Pressbooks platform. Some really high quality ones there. The filters on the site allow you to search. There is not yet a Chinese language textbook on the platform, so yours will be the first one actually, which would be quite exciting. There's mostly English, there's quite a lot of Spanish and a smattering of French and a few other languages, but there's no Chinese ones at this stage, I think. So that will be a good first for you and for Otago, I think. Lennys, then coming to you, you already talked a little bit about sort of the broader discipline, but did you have any other thoughts to add to this conversation, having listened to the other two?
I think what's exciting is that, first of all, you are reducing the barriers, but I think we're increasingly recognising the importance of people seeing themselves on the page. Certainly, I know that from primary schools upwards, it's about seeing yourself, seeing your own stories. And I think this is an opportunity, like what Sophie's been talking about, to do that, to include examples of work health and safety culture from the New Zealand Aotearoa perspective will be really important. And I think that once we build upon that, it brings insights for all the different readers as well. But importantly, I guess I just come back to work health and safety and it's being a social good. So I'm really keen, I do feel that it is a field where you can actually save lives, and that I shouldn't be holding that information to myself, ideally. So it is about that sharing, yeah.
Okay. Just following up on that idea, I guess co-creation is a phrase we could use. Have any of you engaged in this previously, or is it something that you know, obviously we're thinking that this is a possibility. I've certainly seen examples overseas where textbook, in fact, they've done this in Australia, the previous version of the open textbook is used by the subsequent year's students, and they actually effectively create a new edition of the work by co-creating and adapting it, and that's part of the assessment for the students as well, is to produce this thing. So, is that a possibility for your own projects in the future? Or
certainly would be for me.
Yeah.
I really think that you engage students through involving them in the resources, and certainly even the video resources I produced were critiqued, reviewed, refined, based with the students, and I always just put an emphasis that you're building the legacy for the next group of learners. But like you said, what I really love about it also is that it will exist beyond Blackboard. Like once their Blackboard site's down, they can share it with colleagues in their future workplaces. We can continue to get feedback on how relevant that is in the actual workplace. Did you try that idea? Did it work? Build them into case studies, alumni. So I'm really excited to actually do that phase.
Sophie, Christine, did you have any other thoughts?
Well, for the student that is in the paper, each of them have to do one client project, and so they're like, given that we create an sort of open sort of community, if they are ready to share back as part of the case study and contribute back into the textbook, there's always a possibility. Yeah, so that's I'm quite into that sort of iteration kind of development method. I think something like a textbook is always going to have its own life, and as just different cohort comes in and with different sort of project and challenges, then we can use the new case study. We may be talking about sustainability, which is a completely different topic to 10 years ago, where sustainability is not a topic. Innovation become a topic. So that kind of case study can become very fresh.
It's one way to keep, core elements of a textbook, for want of a better word, can remain constant, but if you can update parts of it and that sort of thing. Sophie, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, at the first year level, it's more about getting students into good habits. Although I think, we are starting to move in with our assessment style. We're starting to broaden kind of the options for students to show their learning, making videos, doing presentations, rather than just, the standard writing an essay. And so I think we would like to demonstrate that in our open text as well.
Certainly in my role, I'm seeing more questions come in from people who are asking those questions about, well, I'd like to raise this with my class. How do you go about, and there's privacy things to think about, there's talent release, all that stuff, if you're going down that road, if you're exposing, if I can use that word, student work in a more public way, that changes some fairly fundamental things about how we approach our attitude to the things they produce, and where we put them in and who can access them and all that kind of thing. Okay, great. Well, thank you. So maybe we've been quite high-minded and philosophical so far, I feel. How about thinking a bit more about the nitty-gritty, and what are some of the challenges? There've been a couple of comments about getting to grips with the software and that sort of thing. You guys are trailblazers. You're the guinea pigs, whatever you want to call yourselves. So you're having to kind of learn as you go. I think I can say the institutional support has been fairly low key so far. So how are you finding that in terms of motivating yourself? What are the challenges and that sort of thing? Christine, can I start with you? You mentioned sort of obviously translation as a thing, but in terms of just the software or copyright questions, how about all that kind of thing? What are the challenges for you so far?
For me, I feel like translating from an open textbook is kind of in a way I dodge a lot of bullet, because there's already a version done with all the copyright references there. And given that I'm going to add a bit of my own book, my past material, so there's not too much problem in terms of the copyright sort of material issue. However, in terms of getting the jargons of the translation of jargon, and that is something that it's probably not copyrighted, but takes a lot of research, and the research can be distracting, and it takes a lot of discipline to go, okay, I'm going to have to set myself a deadline with the learning and the research, but it needs to be done, and it's important. So I think self-discipline, putting it in the calendar. I think community, like having you guys and Kate sort of email message every now and then, it's been quite nice. It really does feel like together we are working on something new that is very different, and we're putting some new textbook out there together as the first trial, really.
Great. Lennys, you mentioned grappling with the software, but you also mentioned the community of practice as well as a positive thing for you.
Yeah, it's been really useful to be part of the kind of two-country perspective on doing this, hearing other people's general kind of challenges. But I guess I came at it where I felt quite happy that I had a lot of the content down, and then was really, I guess, getting some of the exposure to some of the real logistical thinkings through of universal design. So thinking about how would someone with a particular disability engage with this work. I guess it got me to reflect on my writing style and my genre. I'm still grappling a little bit there, because I've got several different tones depending on where I find myself writing and what I'm wanting to share. And unlike Christine, I've had to go and discover pictures and make sure that I'm searching under the right licensing, and also kudos to Kate Thompson too for drawing me a pyramid the other day when I needed a drawing. So yeah, just trying to do some of those logistics, and certainly I feel that I couldn't have done it completely on my own, so I'm very grateful for the support.
Okay. Sophie? you've got the added challenge of having 2 other people that you're working with.
Well, I have to acknowledge your support, Richard. Our group, you know, being from, we're not all physically in the same location and we're collaborating on this, it has been hard to sort of carve the time out of our schedules to make this happen. So time has been a big one, but Richard's been helping us organise these hack days, as we call it, where we block out a day from our calendar and just get a lot of writing done.
I mean, really, you need a project manager. You know, that would be the way to go. And you know, that's actually how we did the media studies. We had someone we paid to project manage the whole thing, so that was why it was.
I mean, that would be lovely, but also, you know, having, I think for us academics, having, you know, currently OERs don't have peer review, so, you know, it doesn't act as another publication that you can put on your publication lists. Perhaps more acknowledgement from different places about the work that we've put into this could be useful and
who'd be a teacher,
and impetus to help us do it. But another challenge has been actually trying to move away from the idea of a linear textbook. I didn't realize this was going to be so tricky, but with the OERs, you know, it opens up a lot of possibilities. The structure of a textbook, students aren't necessarily going to be reading it, you know, chapter by chapter, and that's kind of been hard to.
I haven't really seen the other 2 works really, but certainly with your one, some of it's quite dense scientific knowledge that I imagine is stuff that students are going to have to keep referring back to. So when you get further on, they might be looking at this topic, but they probably think, oh, I need to brush up on the thing. So it can be much more a hyperlinked thing that they're going to be jumping around in, is kind of how I envisage it happening. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, there's the fundamentals, and then there's sort of case studies and local examples and things, and they don't necessarily have to, they're not going to be read in sequence.
Yeah. And I mean, there's also some basic questions you guys have been discussing in your meetings. Just how do you approach the length, for example, of it? What is a chapter? Is it now actually a much shorter thing because there's no constraint on, you know, you can make it as short or as long as you like on a web page. So those are interesting questions you're having to grapple with.
There's almost too much flexibility. We'll get used to it.
So it's a matter of adopting an editorial style or whatever. You mentioned tone is a different thing as well. So there's so many different things to grapple with. But, you know, I'm getting the sense each of you are enjoying it. It's a challenge you're excited by, and you're actually learning a lot along the way. I guess, is that a fair
absolutely
comment? In a good way, I hope, not a frustrating banging your head against the software kind of way. Yeah. Okay. Now we're getting towards the end of our time. I'll just remind people online that they can ask us questions. I'm just checking my tablet here. Nothing has appeared, so do pop those in if you would like to ask a question. And I won't come to the studio just yet, but I'm just seeding the idea in your minds that Lloyd may come to you with a microphone shortly. Just in terms of wrapping up our conversation amongst the 3 of us here, we've touched on most of the things that I think we imagine we might talk about, but are there any final thoughts that you wanted to add, something we haven't discussed so far that you'd like to feed into the conversation, Sophie?
Yeah, so you mentioned at the beginning one of the benefits being the fact that it's not just open access for the consumers, it's also open access for authors as well. So in terms of, you know, share alike copyrights and being able to take material and kind of reuse it where needed, that's been really useful for us because we're wanting to move to this sort of place-based kind of approach where we use local Aotearoa examples. What that allows us to do is, you know, when we're having to explain just fundamentals, we can take content that's already been created, and that frees up our time to focus on the things that, you know, can't be written by someone from another country, the local examples. And so that's not something that I anticipated when we started this project, but I'm seeing it, the possibilities.
I remember in one of our meetings having a discussion about the Creative Commons attribution license, and you guys finding it odd in a way that people could just copy it.
Yeah,
What is
yeah,
this? Surely I can't do it. It's plagiarism. Oh, no, no, it's not. It's legal because the license says you can, but it's that difference between the copyright legal side of it and the moral side, for want of a better word, of being the author and recognised as the author, which still carries over with the Creative Commons licenses. It's, you know, that is never removed by an open access license, the moral side of it and being attributed as the author. And then that means you can't just plagiarise them either. But it was an interesting concept for you guys.
Yeah, a pretty foreign concept to us, but that's really been the main thing that's allowed so many people across the world to make these texts that are really relevant to students' immediate surroundings.
Yeah, and you'll see editions, and geology actually has quite a few different ones that have been localised in different places, but they're all originating really from one or two of these original open texts.
Yeah.
It's that cycle of creativity and adaptation, building on the work of others. Yeah, Christine, did you have anything that we haven't discussed that you would like to add in as final thoughts for you?
No, but I think that there are, like, for management study anyway, there are already a lot of resources on the internet, and for the student it can be distracting, and I think having that sort of step-by-step ladder upward, and I don't actually think copyright has been, like, of course it's nice to have been able to share openly. There are copyrights of management material out there, but yeah, there's so much material that students can get through. So for them, I think, this is probably not an issue. And for me to share it freely, it's not an issue, because if I don't share and with a particular perspective, with a bit more sort of out here, New Zealand's focus, there'll be the American, there'll be the UK, there'll be the European, and I think we deserve to have our own voice.
Thank you. Yeah, with the media studies, when I mentioned it and having been accessed over 500,000 times, so that they never in their wildest dreams imagined that it would be so widely used. I told the person who was kind of the academic lead on the project, she'd moved to another university, and I told her how often it had been accessed, and her jaw dropped, and she's like, this is by far the most read thing I've ever written by a magnitude of many thousands. Yeah. So, Linnea, did you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's really, I just encourage people to imagine what it could do. So everything from imagine a student being able to look at the textbook when they're in second year to consider if they want to do my paper in third year. Imagine I've already had someone contact me through this process to say, hey, you're a work health and safety academic, I'm in this project as well from another uni, let's collaborate on some things. It sounds like our work's going to complement. So I'm excited to see where that could go. I'm excited to share within the Otago Business School, we have partnerships across the world with other business schools that could go there. And yeah, like I said, in the work health and safety space, it might just help someone somewhere, and that's got a purpose of its own.
Help someone not die. It sounds
help
good.
Someone not die. Yeah.
Okay. That's a good note for us to conclude on, perhaps. I'm not seeing any questions on my magic device. Is anyone in the room going to prompt us with a question? Perhaps we've exhausted the topic sufficiently that everyone's satisfied that we've covered everything. Okay, excellent. Well, that doesn't mean you can't contribute to the discussion afterwards. As I said at the beginning, one of the key ideas behind CALT Kōrero is that we want to foster debate outside of just these live events, so you don't have to be here in the room or watching live, but you can contribute later. So I'll finish today by giving a number of thank yous, firstly to the media production unit guys who have really made things seamless for us here from a technical point of view and provided these wonderful couches for us to sit on, etc. And also to Russell and Bronwyn from HEDC, who have done a lot of the dark arts behind the scenes to make sure that this got off the ground, to Professor Helen Nicholson and CALT for spearheading this initiative, and also to our audience here in the room. Thank you for coming along. It's nice to see some faces in the room, and to everyone who's joined, and to all of you who are watching in the future as well. Thank you for engaging with this content. And lastly, of course, thank you very much to my wonderful panel, three engaged, interested academics who have students at heart, I think, at the core of everything you're doing. So thank you for your work on the project and your input today. So with that, look out for some communication about the videos that will have come out of today, which will go up on the CALT Kōrero website. So there'll be some communication coming through the normal university channels about where to find that material. If you're interested in hearing more about the CALT OER project, you can contact me, Richard White, or my colleague Kate Thompson from the Law Library, or chat to your subject librarian initially would be a great place to start as well. And we can talk to you about what the project is and how you can get involved if that's what you want to do, having been inspired by these three here today. There'll also be some training and information sessions to look out for through those normal communication channels if you want to find out more. The last thing for me to mention is that, as I said, this is the first in a series of Kōrero about different topics, and Helen referred to that in her thing at the start. So the next one, I'll certainly be wanting to tune in for this one, is the implications of AI in higher education, which we're all talking about at the moment. I actually originally got ChatGPT to write my introduction for today, but I did toss it and use my own one in the end because it made up a whole lot of fake information I didn't think I could use. So anyway, with that, kia ora to my panel and tēnā koutou to everyone watching. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again next time. Ka kite anō.